today we are going to talk about classification, and we have two different lectures for classification. The first one will cover the classical approaches, which were there before deep learning. And then we will talk about how classification can be solved using deep learning approaches. Okay, so we have two different lectures for the same topic. And this is the first lecture. The outline for this lecture will be, first we will briefly cover the basics of classification, and most of that we have already covered in this course in previous lectures. And then we will move on to like different kind of classification approaches which were there before deep learning era. And we will start with nearest neighbor classifier. Then we'll talk about maximum margin classifier. And finally, we'll talk about support vector machines. Okay, so let's start with the first segment, which is just covering the basics of classification. And as I said, we have covered most of it like in the previous lectures. So I will quickly run through these slides. And if you have any questions, you can later ask those questions. Okay, so the main idea of classification is, given a sample, you want to actually identify which class category this sample belongs to. And in that, you will have like some set of classes. Okay, so you'll have to choose one and say, okay, this sample belongs to this particular category. And one simple example for this could be like your, let's say, digit classification. You could have your data set where you have images of those digits, and digits will be from 0 to 9. And a simple classification problem will be given an image of the digit. You will say like which of these digits is present in that image. Okay. Now that will require, because we have like we have numbers from 0 to 9. So that will require like a 10-way classifier, because each sample could belong to either 10 of the either one of those 10 categories, right? So before moving on to like multi-label, that's called multi-label classification or multi-class classification. And that's like a more advanced scenario. But let's begin with like a very simple case, which is called binary classification. And in this case, the idea is you just have two classes, or even like a simpler case, you might have just one class. And the idea will be, for example, if the class is person detection, so you have to detect whether a person is present in an image or not. So you can solve that as either person is present, that will be one class. Person is not present, that could be the second class. All right. So the way it will look is now we know features, and features we know like it has like a certain dimensionality. For example, it could have like, let's say 10 different numbers, or it may have 1,000 different numbers. Okay, so that will be your features. And in this case, I'm just showing you features which are two-dimensional. Okay, so this is your Euclidean space. And all these dots over here are your samples. All right. And depending upon what's the X and Y coordinate, or you can say like those two are your features, where they lie in the Cartesian coordinate or your Euclidean space, you are just putting that point on that space. Okay. So in this case, the blue dots are, let's say, category number 1, and the orange dots are category number 2. And here you can see that you can actually draw a very clear straight line between these two categories. And if you remember, like from your algebra or maybe numerical analysis, like your high school maths, you know that you can represent a line using a simple equation. And if you have that equation for this line, that equation can serve as a classifier. And then you can put like each of these points in that equation of line, and depending upon what's the sign of that of the resultant value, you can estimate whether that point is actually towards the blue side or towards the orange side. And if the point is exactly on this line, then you will get perfect 0. Okay, so over this line, all points are perfect 0, and it could be like all the points towards blue are negative and all the points toward orange are positive. Okay, so in this case, this line, or you can say like a simple equation, is serving as a classifier.